You're listening to the Amazing Facts Daily Devotional. Today's topic, Esther, Rags to Riches, Part 2. On May 5, 1945, in the midst of a harrowing Japanese attack in World War II, an unarmed medic saved 75 of his injured comrades by lowering them down a 400-foot cliff. But if you would have asked Private First Class Desmond Doss how he completed that feat, he would have told you that it was not he, but God, who spared their lives that day. As for Esther, she had been queen for some time when she discovered that her life and those of all the Jews in Persia were on the line. Through Mordecai, Esther learned that there had been a new decree written announcing the genocide of all Jewish people in Persia, Esther chapter 3 verses 8 and 9. The architect behind it was the prime minister Haman, who had been slighted when Mordecai had refused to bow to him. Verse 2. Mordecai then requested that Esther beg for the lives of her people directly to her husband. But Esther was afraid. If she initiated a visit to the king in his inner court, Persian law stated that she would be put to death unless the king held out his golden scepter to her, signaling mercy. Chapter 4, verse 11. She did not want to go, but Mordecai responded with a perspective that changed Esther's mind. He reminded her of her duty, her heritage, and her faith, verses 13 and 14. His words gave her a purpose. They reminded her that she was not alone. It was God who had brought her to her current station, and it was God who would go with her. Esther decided she would go, but not without much prayer and fasting. Verse 16. 3 days later, when Esther entered the king's court, the scepter was held out to her. Chapter 5, verse 2. The next day, in front of King Ahasuerus and Haman himself, she unmasked the latter as a premeditator of murder. Chapter 7, verses 3 to 6. In the end, Haman was put to death. Verse 10. And a new decree was written in the Jews' defense, chapter 8, verses 5 to 13. Esther had submitted to God's calling for her life. Through her, God brought about the Jews' deliverance. Although he is not mentioned in the entire book of Esther, God's providence is all over its pages. What divine appointments have you received from God? What would you be willing to give up in order to fulfill them? Our key Bible text today comes from Esther chapter 4 and verse 14. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Thank you for listening to the Amazing Facts Daily Devotional.